finally, the best interview, the most effective interview, probably doesn't ask any questions at all. If you've got someone who's comfortable and you're coming at it from a place of humility and respect, sometimes all you need to say is, tell me the story of what happened. And then you just let the person talk. And you might have to nudge them along with a few questions, but usually that's the only thing you need to say. And the person will typically tell the story in their own words, which is important, and in their own time, which is also important.
I'm thinking about this idea of having an interview be one question and then just letting people tell their story in their own words. I think that's probably really powerful. And I bet people can sense that when you're talking with them. I guess that's what I'm getting at is I bet two things. One, if you had the wrong person listening who didn't have that humility and that respect, people sense that. People probably wouldn't want to talk to you. But because you are who you are, I could see why that would be really effective. But also, I think that that's a skill that people can probably learn. So I think the book could be really effective there. So what's your general advice for people when you're talking to them? And I'd love to hear it, if you can, from the perspective of an investigator and then the person who's maybe being investigated or the organization that's being investigated when they're going through it. From this communication perspective, what do most people get wrong in those scenarios?
Well, I wrote the book because I thought things were done not so great. So there's a lot to pick from there.
Okay.
If we're talking about the interview.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, talk wherever you want. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no pun intended, but there's a lot to interrogate with where interviews go wrong. Sometimes just the use of language. If you've been involved in a workplace accident, maybe you've done something at work and as a result, you've injured yourself. So you're already feeling probably a bit embarrassed. You're already dealing with the fact that you're hurt in some way. You might be recovering from an injury. There might be some trauma associated with that. So you're already feeling not so great. So when I call you up and say, hey, I want to interview you for an investigation, I'm already using words that plant a seed in your mind that this is going to be a formal process and there's going to be formal questions and it's very authoritative. I'm coming in with authority over you who doesn't have authority, and there's a bit of a power play happening there. Imagine the difference that it can make if I just ring you up and say, hey, Jeff, I know you're hurt, man. That sucks. That really sucks. Let me know what I can do to help, but I'd love to catch up. Can we have a chat? Do you want to, if we can, we'll grab a coffee and let's just talk about what happened. Really keen to know. How different is that? That person's probably going to say, okay, here's someone that is going to listen to what I have to say. Here's someone that's not coming at it from this kind of formal, authoritative approach. This is just someone that wants to hear what I have to say. And that person's probably going to be more willing to talk.
So if you came to me and this was a scenario and you said, Jeff, let's have a coffee and talk about what happened, I'd be like, man, this is great. Let's do this. How do you separate that from a formal conversation though? Because I mean, then if you come back to me later and we, I don't know, just say something goes on and then the investigation continues. And then at some point we're having some point something happens and I realize, oh, that wasn't just a conversation with Des. Like he was like actually gathering information about this. Like the trust is going to be broken immediately. So how do you then bridge that conversation into the conversation that ultimately needs to happen? I'm guessing that happens at a later time, but I don't know. And I'd love to hear.
Yeah, it's something that you really need to be conscious of. And the best way to deal with it is with sincerity. So if I am going to have that chat with you, I would say, Jeff, I want to have a chat. I've been tasked with understanding what happened so that we can prevent this from happening again. And so I want to hear your story to better understand how we can prevent something like this from happening. I might have to put what you say in a report. I'm not going to ask you to guess. I'm not going to ask you to make judgments. I just want to understand what you saw, what you heard, what you felt, what you did, just to better understand what happened. And there's an important point here, and it's talked about a lot in safety circles. There's plenty of discussions on LinkedIn amongst safety people about a thing called psychological safety. Do people feel safe enough psychologically to want to speak up? And you really need to foster a psychologically safe environment for people to be able to want to speak. And if your organization has a history of punishing people and being punitive about the outcomes of workplace safety incidents, you're probably not going to get an open and honest account of what happened from those people. They're going to be guarding themselves against that punitive response.
I could see that. I mean, so the proactive labeling to let them know up front, that makes perfect sense of why you would do that, to let them know, to really set expectations of exactly what is going to happen in the conversation, still doing it in a genuine and a friendly way. But then coming through on it, word's going to get around real quick. And so if your actions don't follow that, what you described, then you're going to lose that trust again, which is what something I've heard you talk about trust several different ways. So I could see why that wouldn't be something.
But it's something, when I say you need to foster that psychologically safe environment, that's something you have to do every single day. When you go and speak to someone, you can't judge someone for what they're doing. You can't say, oh, that's silly. And it just comes down to language. If I find you on a construction site and I say, Jeff, you're not wearing your hard hat, put your hard hat on, I'm accusing you of something because I'm saying you're not doing something. But if instead I say, hey, Jeff, I noticed you're not wearing a hard hat today. Is everything all right? And you've got an opportunity then to say, oh yeah, everything's fine. I just, I took it off momentarily to scratch my head or something like that. It gives you an opportunity to tell your story without being judged, without being prejudged